We don't have any competitors. What we offer is so unique. There is no one like us in the market. That is absolutely not true, and I'm going to talk you through why that is. Hello and welcome to Engage and Thrive, also known as EAT, your coffee catch-up with me, your host, Taelon, where we will go through common problems and hurdles that come up in business, marketing and advertising and try and demystify them. I know firsthand how complicated and confusing it can seem with all the different acronyms and all the things to do in business. So let me try and help you be better in business. First things first, let's start with grabbing a coffee. Okay, so I love challenging people when they say they don't have any competitors. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, there is always some competition or there is always some alternative. You're not the first to ever have an idea. And even if you have a niche, you know, if you give the examples of Netflix and Spotify and Uber, and they are like so innovative and so unique. But we still had alternatives that we used before, and people still are using other alternatives to them. So there always is competition. And this I find really interesting because when I start working with a brand, you know, whether it's a personal brand or a big business corporation, and I say, who are your competitors or who should we be watching and monitoring? And they're like, oh, no one, or there's no one like us. It almost like makes me crumble thinking like, oh gosh, there's your weakness straight away up front, not understanding what's happening in your space and to be aware of it because you're so in this bubble around your uniqueness. And I say that because I've also been in a few startups where the CEO was so sad that we were so special and so unique. And that hurt us in the long term, and the startup couldn't succeed because we almost were blocked by that. So as always, let's go through acronyms that are likely to come up when you're talking about competitors or competitor analysis. We may not use them in the takeaways that I talk about, but just so you can understand what may come up. So the first one, as always, that comes up is ROI, return on investment. This will come up day in, day out. I repeat this pretty much every episode because it's probably one of the key acronyms spoken about in business. What is your bang for your buck? So when you're spending, what do you get back for it? The next one is SWOT, so your SWOT analysis, which is your strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. So understanding your SWOTs around the business. The next one is PESTLE, and I always get confused about the different E's. So it's political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. Again, understanding those impacts to your business is your PESTLE. The next one is LTV, so lifetime customer lifetime value. Understanding, how much money that customer is going to bring you. Again, we can go into that in a further episode. KPI, key performance indicator, CVR, conversion rate. I think that's all I've covered off. Right, today we're going to go through 3 key takeaways about understanding your competitors and why this is important. So, number 1, as always, is your competitor analysis. Now, when I say competitor analysis, this is when people cringe and go, oh, well, we don't have any competitors. And this is where I'm saying it's really important to understand as a market analysis. So really, who are your direct competitors? There will be some. And if you don't think there are, then who are emerging people or businesses or companies or services that you need to be aware of? Who are indirect? So they may be offering, if you have a service, they may be offering some parts of your service, but you might have an all-in-one. So you think, well, people are going to come to us because we do an all-in-one. Not always. Or if you're offering a product and people offer, if you were doing burgers, but someone's offering some buns or some bread, there's still indirect competition. Somewhere you need to be aware of. A lot of the indirect as well, you may want to think about as partnerships. So future potential business opportunities that you can do. The other thing to think about is with the emerging ones is out of industry. So the same with like emerging or indirect is out of industry thoughts and things that you want to consider where businesses are evolving and they may diversify into your market. So again, to be aware of or what may come up, which leads me into number 2, your USP. So We've covered this off before. Oh, we didn't cover the acronym USP. So unique selling point. I'm going to add that in the show notes. That was an acronym. That's my mistake. I apologize. So your unique selling point is really what makes you different to everyone else. And again, we established this from establishing a brand, establishing a product. But when we're talking about USP in the competitor front, you also need to think about the customer's perception of your USP. So if you are out of stock of a product, or if your website went down and your service is not available, what would they pick as an alternative? So that's the customer perception of who your competitors are or what your alternative is to you. And I say this because even say if you were selling meats, so chicken or pork, and you might think, oh, the alternative is another variant of meat. But actually, an alternative could be tofu, because people are thinking, well, if I can't get pork, I'll have the tofu equivalent of a pork. Clearly, I'm hungry this morning. So it's really understanding the customer perception. This can be really interesting. As much as I dislike recall data, because it's not always good to rely on it, if you lose a customer or a client, as a lost sale, it's good to understand, to say to them why, who do they pick alternatively, or if you're running market research, to understand what people are picking in the market around that, and even social listening, what else are people talking about similar to you? So this kind of encompasses around your USP. Again, understanding those alternatives strengthens your USP and strengthens your whole brand storytelling around your unique proposition. Which then goes into number 3, sorry, not number 4. Oh, running away with myself. Number 3 is future readiness. So you need to honestly monitor this ongoing. Firstly, from like a basis of how can you improve? How can you be getting feedback? How can you understand what's happening? How things are shifting in the market? If I remind you back again when we're talking about Netflix and Spotify, I don't think Blockbuster ever thought Netflix would exist or that would happen. But look what happened. If we're talking about Airbnb, Uber, people didn't think those were ever going to happen. So understanding that. To give you a live example, the explosion of AI, I don't think anyone realised how quick and how fast this was going to pick up pace. So again, understanding that future readiness, where you may have believed even a few weeks ago that you were the unique one, you had this niche point. Well, with AI now, you might not. So the competitor part, again, is really good to understand and monitor ongoing, having those benchmarks, understanding where they are, how they're evolving, what are they expanding on their product or services, even down to the point of what's their social content, what's their website look like, what is their customer experience, because again, that could go back to why someone doesn't pick you, because if your website or your customer experience of purchasing is really long and fuddy, to be honest, they may pick someone else because it's easier to find the information and buy. So I think the future readiness is probably one of the key parts to take away as the third and final part. But all in all, I suppose as an overarching summary is you will have a competitor. There will be a competitor in some way or form. And if you think that you are so unique and so special, even if you have a made-up name like me, you're still not that special. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but there is competition. So the big thing to take away of understanding your competitors is do your research, do your homework, monitor it, and trust me, it'll strengthen your brand. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing, and this will help you. So thank you for joining me for another week of Engage and Thrive with your host, Taelon, and see you next week, Thursday, for another coffee catch-up.